Receiving Juz Amma. We're going to talk about a topic called chains of transmission. So the first thing to note is when you take your knowledge from someone, and we're talking about Islamic knowledge here, what you should do is find out whether the teacher you are learning from has an unbroken chain of transmission back to the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And what we're trying to emphasize here is that when you take your knowledge, you should be very, very careful, because your deen depends on the knowledge that you learn. And a way of safeguarding your knowledge is to learn from people who have learnt from people who have learnt from people, all the way back to the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And this is something that has been lost in our times, but there are still people who have these unbroken chains of transmission. Now, when you learn your tajweed, we receive the Quran or a particular juz from a teacher. And when we're talking about receiving, we mean that you have been taught directly from a teacher who has recited to you, and then you have recited back, and they have checked you and corrected you until your recitation is in line with the teacher. And this teacher should have a chain of transmission back to the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, which means he was checked by his teacher, and his teacher was checked by his teacher, so that you can guarantee that the way you are being taught has been preserved all the way back to the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Now, if you master your recitation with a teacher who is giving you the Quran or a juz, then the teacher has the option to give you what is called an ijaza. Now, an ijaza is a license to teach what you have received from your teacher. And this is normally not easy to achieve. It goes through some very difficult stages, and you go through some very rigorous training and testing with your teacher. Now, in our time, there are 10 ways or different ways to recite the Quran, and they have particular names, and essentially these were very famous chains of transmissions that came from very famous reciters of the Quran in the early Muslim generations. And 10 of these different ways of reciting have survived until our day. And the one that we're going to be learning is called Hafs from Asim. So what does that actually mean? Well, the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught many of his companions the correct recitation of the Quran. And there were different ways of reciting. And we've listed here 5 of the big or well-known companions who were very well known for their recitation of the Quran, and are also very well-known companions. May Allah be pleased with all of them. Now, there was a student of one of the great reciters of the Quran called Abdullah al-Sulami, and he learnt directly from 5 of these great companions and more companions as well. He had a student, one of his greatest students, called Asim, and one of Asim's greatest students was Hafs. Now, Hafs, along with another 9 Quran reciters, became very, very prominent, very famous in the early generations of the Muslims, and hence people became accustomed to learning from his way of reciting, i.e. his chain of transmission, and it became known as reciting with Hafs from Asim. And that has remained all the way until our time, and that's what we're going to be learning our one juz with this particular chain of transmission, i.e. there are certain rules, certain ways of reciting that are particular to Hafs from Asim, and that's what we're going to be teaching you for this one juz. And that's a brief introduction to receiving the Quran and what that actually means.